The issue I chose to discuss is pseudojournalism, or as it is more commonly known as, fake news. Fake news has no basis in fact, but is presented as being factually accurate. Fake news websites take on the form of authentic news websites by including things such as author biographies and embedded video clips. They will have outrageous headlines and content that intentionally serves to spiral emotions with the intent of being shared, so that way the authors can receive large sums of money through ad revenue, and in some cases, they will try to spread political propaganda. These websites live and thrive off of social media networks such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat because these websites allow users to instantly share or retweet any of their statuses or news articles that they encounter to all of their friends and followers, which in most cases surpass the hundreds or even thousands. With this being said, Statista.com, an online statistics portal with stats and studies from over 18,000 sources, found that 78% of Americans hold at least one social media networking account, while at the same time, they estimate that by 2020, there will be 3 billion active social media users. As we take a look at World Truth TV, a very popular fake news website, one will notice that they have a fairly large amount of fans. And this brings us to why this is a pressing issue in American society. The people rely on the media to provide them with enough information to develop their own thoughts on the state of the country and its leaders. Yet when the quote-unquote media is more concerned with instrumental value, the truth is left behind because the truth is not necessarily always what people want to read. And American democracy is affected because in this country the people choose their leaders, and when the people are not fully educated, neither are their decisions. Initially, I felt as though the best way to eradicate fake news were to leave it to the United States government to be in control of regulating the internet, or more specifically, social media platforms. Now, although this is a rather unpopular opinion, the main reason why I believe that this was the best alternative because it was the best of a bad situation, so to say. Mainly because Google and Facebook and YouTube, all these platforms that give these fake news websites their ad revenue, like the sources of their advertisements, they can do some things to help by decreasing the amount of ad money they can get, or sometimes they even have a hard time picking out where the sites are because their access is very limited and they don't really always have the power to just remove a website, whereas the government, they can do pretty much whatever they want, especially when they're left in control of that situation. They can make it against law. And I believe it especially falls in the hands of the government once these fake news scandals start to become a problem to society outside of just the computer screen. For example, the Pizzagate scandal, where in 2016 during the presidential election, there was a popular news article that was floating around that accused the Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton of running a child trafficking ring outside of a local Washington pizza parlor. And in late November, a 28-year man walked into the parlor with a loaded AR-15 rifle and began opening fire. Fortunately, nobody was injured, but this story was completely fake and was traced back to an online messaging board, and it was shared over 100,000 times, according to BuzzFeed. And this was not the first time where a fake story caused enough buzz to generate public reaction. Prior to Pizzagate, there was Ebola. And in 2014, during this Ebola crisis, fake news websites were hardly as existent as they are now, and therefore they were hardly as recognizable. So the National Report, a self-identified political satire site, released false stories that had headlines such as Texas town quarantined after family of 5 test positive for the Ebola virus. Whether or not the satire behind these articles was understood by the majority of people is difficult to determine. However, the Texas story was still shared 330,000 times on Facebook in accordance to Muckrak's Who Shared algorithm. Irrational fears of the virus within the U.S. most definitely caused this amount of web attention, yet in the end, the U.S. only had 4 imported cases of Ebola and 2 deaths, compared to West Africa, which suffered 30,000 cases and 11,000 deaths. The Ebola virus was taken so seriously that Casey Hicks-Hawks, a volunteer Doctors Without Borders nurse, was quarantined for 80 hours upon her arrival stateside with no medical symptoms of Ebola, and she was quarantined by the New Jersey Department of Health by the order of Governor Chris Christie. And there are countless other fake news stories that were even more popular than this. It was so large that BuzzFeed made a list of the top 50 fake news stories of 2016, and the most popular was an article accusing President Obama of signing an executive order to ban the Pledge of Allegiance in public schools, and this was shared 2.1 million times on Facebook. And the second most popular story was about Pope Francis endorsing the Trump campaign with over 900,000 shares. Perhaps not everybody who read and shared these stories fully believed them, but the people should not even have to debate such ludicrous headlines or question the legitimacy of their news providers. When all else is considered, my belief remains the same that the government should regulate the internet by imposing laws against the creation of fake news and label them as a violation of free speech, just as it is to scream fire in a crowded theater when there really is no fire, because that is essentially what these stories do. And there's only so much that Facebook and Google can do to fight against fake news, because people who make these fake news will always find ways, loopholes to fight back against their efforts. I mean, to put this in perspective, there are actually 101 websites out there to teach people how to create fake news websites, how to effectively advertise them to make money, as well as how to avoid being banned from the websites. So I believe if it were ultimately up to the hands of the United States government, finding these sorts of loopholes would not be so easy, and the government would has much different privileges than companies. So I truly believe that the government would be the end all be all of fake news online.